Yeah.
And that's why we've seen so much activity in the last couple of weeks. And I think this is just going to help to fuel that because people have found their footing. They understand now, they're getting their heads wrapped around the new affordability. And I think that's, just going to fuel things. So interesting. Happy we could bring that news to you if you hadn't tuned in.
Yeah.
So welcome. Jacqueline's here now. We're all set and ready to go. Our special guest today is Jacob. Welcome.
Good morning.
Markowiak.
That's right.
From Pumpkin House Photography. He is a dear friend of ours, a big supporter of ours too, I would say. And a pleasure to have you here today. We wanted to talk about the importance of photography and videography when it comes to marketing your property. We joke amongst realtors about the cheesy iPhone photos and some bad things that we've seen. So we just wanted to highlight some of that and talk about how we can overcome that and things we can do to help you as a homeowner as well, best prepare your property for coming to the market.
Just to add on that too, we wanted to really talk about this topic because we want you to be aware that when your agent is sitting down with you and you're interviewing agents and they're telling you about their marketing packages and what they offer, make sure they follow through with that. If you are paying them a $50,000 commission, they should be utilizing and reinvesting that money, hiring professionals to get the most amount of people through your door.
Yes.
That's the goal, not pinching pennies on their end. So anyway, just some food for thought. I'm going to dig more into that.
I did it also for those joining us for the first time. I'm Jessica Menard, Jacqueline Clement, and Sarah DeVore. We are all realtors here within the Dufferin County area with Century 21 Millennia. And today we're actually on set within our own office, which is a little bit different for us. Another dear friend of ours, Esther from Olive and Ash, was so kind to set up our content studio here for us today.
We've kind of moved it around a little. Sorry, Esther.
We apologize.
Jacob came in and was like,
angles.
all right, so you're going to do this.
I would like to point out, I did say that, we might get in trouble for this, but I'm in your good books.
Esther, I was like, Esther knows us. She knows we're going to move things.
So anyways,
Yeah.
Jacob,
Hey.
how did you get started?
Well, thanks very much for having me. First off, I really appreciate the opportunity to sit down and talk with you guys today. And also, happy International Women's Day.
She couldn't remember that.
Cool way to
This is
celebrate.
why we love you.
My partner in business is my wife as well and everything. So
I think
Hi,
Tara.
Tara.
She's watching, I believe.
she wasn't
Sorry,
able to
Tara.
join us today, but I think she's watching. So Pumpkin House Photography, I'm the co-owner with my wife and partner, Tara, and we specialize in commercial photography and filmmaking. So what that means, like commercial photography versus consumer photography, is we have more business-to-business relationships. So we help business owners that have something to sell to present and promote their products in a way that's going to come across as a higher professional standard than what they might have been able to do.
Because you didn't start in real estate photography.
That's
so
right.
I find that a really cool story. I think most people do. Can you tell us really briefly about
Yeah,
that?
for sure. So photography, as it is for a lot of people, was a passion of mine. It was a hobby, and it started to develop into more of a special interest, and I started making more investments, and it started getting expensive. So the next camera needs to find a way to pay for itself. But the way I got my start was several years ago. Tara and I were, as you do, when you're adulting, just kind of like browsing the MLS just to see what's going on in the neighborhood. And I realized that after watching about 4 or 5 real estate videos, that I hadn't actually finished watching any of them.
Right.
They had run times of usually about 2 to sometimes up to 6 minutes, but I was like 45 seconds in to a video, and I would just be like, okay, I get it, and I'd move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And then I started putting it together, like, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Yeah.
Like, there's skilled cinematographers and filmmakers that could be telling a narratively driven story about the product that's being presented. You know what I mean? And there's not a lot of people that will have multiple $1 million assets in their life. Your home is usually the one.
Yeah.
So when it comes to selling that, I figured that maybe there's somewhere for me to add some value. And we started investing in equipment like the drones and that kind of stuff that's required to do this properly. And I made a reel of my own house and shared that with a friend who's a local realtor, and started looking jobs, and
It's really cool.
eventually was able to quit my job and do this full time. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah, that's the genesis story, I guess.
Now, the reason that we all really kind of we flocked to you, and a lot of the local agents have flocked to you, because we were going through having the same experience where every video was looking the same, every videographer we used looked the same,
Very cookie cutter.
trying to give us guidance as far as like when the agents in the video. I know you hate us for it because we're a lot when we're together,
No.
but you are so good at giving direction. You have so many creative ideas, and you really are putting together the pride you take in your work, but you're putting together like a movie. You're
It's
telling
really
a story.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
how many clients have come to us and said, I bawled my eyes out
Yes,
watching that video.
you get the
because it just-
feels,
Yeah, it's
right?
all the feels.
And
Yeah.
we looked forever, years, we were looking for a photographer, a videographer that would work with us to bring visions that we had to life. And it was very difficult because they're like, no, I shoot a house. I
Yeah.
shoot a house because I have no creativity,
Right.
which
Yeah, I mean,
It's
to be fair
common.
to others that do this kind of thing, there's two different
Oh.
kind of, no, that's true, it's not everybody. But I don't know if I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but there tends to be two camps in my industry.
Mhm.
And there's the, and this, I think it's probably true in general terms for real estate agents as well.
Yes,
They'll
what
have,
they're
like-
looking for.
Yeah, like sometimes you might be working with a very large team, there might be 20, 30, 40 agents on a team. And it's a volume-driven business, you know what I mean? And I can't really speak to that business model because that's not my world.
Mhm.
But I do know that the photographers that tend to do large volumes of work, they tend to model their pricing on how much volume they're pushing through as well.
Right.
And I don't know if necessarily one is the cause and the other the effect, or if it's the inverse, where it is the price that drives the volume,
Mhm.
or if it's the volume that's causing the price to become what it is so that they can turn out as much as they possibly can.
Right,
Yeah.
makes sense.
But it's all about working really quickly. And one of the things that kind of distinguishes a real estate videographer from a typical commercial filmmaker is your turnaround time. That's a massive part of it.
Huge.
You don't have time to prepare. I don't know what the house looks like before I get there.
Mhm.
And versus making a commercial video for somebody, I'm mapping out a storyboard and we have all of these different steps, just preparation and everything. And then we might have all day to film a scene.
Right.
Whereas here, I've got like less than 48 hours to not just shoot all the photography and do all the filming, and then every other customer that I might be taking care of within that 48-hour period. But I also have to deliver the finished product in that time as well.
yes,
Yeah.
we expect very quick results
Yeah, it
in
needs
this
to be quick. It
business.
needs to be quick.
Not us, no.
Yeah.
Well,
We're
no,
so
I've never.
so-
Well, that's because
Hey,
sellers
actually.
expect it quickly too.
Yeah,
Well,
so
we
it's
like,
they're ready to
perfect
sell.
world, we always say like, okay, 2 to 3 weeks, get your property prepared and get onto the market, but it never seems to happen that way. There's always some sense of urgency, and it's, unfortunately, we put that pressure on you.
Yeah, and some companies are very good at turning around a lot of stuff really, really quickly.
Mhm.
The consequence is there's not a lot of room for being creative with it. And actually sitting down and actually thinking about the shot and thinking about how you're going to be editing this scene and cutting everything together. You have to follow a template so that you can spit it out quickly, because it sort of becomes an assembly line.
Right.
And how many times do we hear that buyers buy based on emotion? Like 90%
Yes.
of their purchase is emotion. So
Yeah.
again, that's why we love you and what you do in the filmmaking versus just video.
Yeah.
Is you give those feels.
Yeah, we try to keep it boutique. So we limit the number of shoots that we book in a week, so that I have ample time to actually treat everyone like a commercial production. And if there's opportunities to be involved with you guys on set and actually have little moments where we can inject a little bit of that lifestyle.
I feel like he's always like, please say no.
Those are some of my favorite videos to shoot, because those are the ones that for me feel more rewarding, because I feel like I've actually produced something that looks and feels as cinematic as what I intended to do in the first place.
Right.
When we can add motion to a scene,
Mhm.
Motion is emotion, and then that really helps because my subject matter is static.
Right.
And so if there's any opportunity to, that's why real estate videos is kind of corny, but we'll run the water.
Mhm.
And if you have running water,
Yeah.
it creates motion in the frame, and you don't have to overcompensate with crazy camera movements and all
So many
that kind of
times I've
stuff.
had to explain that to people and being like, no, there is a reason why Jacob is doing this. It's because it's it's adding
Even
that
like the
extra.
leaves blowing on the
Yeah.
trees and
Yes.
little subtle touches like that too. Yeah.
But it grabs the attention back. I remember the first time you did that with us and we're like, oh, why are we doing this? And you said that like people's minds start to wander, so it brings them back in.
Now,
Yeah,
not to
you
be
need a
confused
hook.
with a
Yeah.
photograph of a faucet turned on.
Yes.
We're talking video.
Yes. We'll get to that. We'll get to
Yes.
that. That's a whole other.
But if you guys want to check out, we sort of skipped ahead because we were super excited about this topic. I was super excited about this topic because I used to do photography. That's what I went to college for. But besides the point, I couldn't do it. But there's a reason I did.
Yes.
You guys can check out Jake's work on his Instagram or Facebook at Pumpkin House Photography, or on his website, pumpkinhousephoto.com. And then you'll get a sense of what it is that we're talking about, why we have him here versus somebody else. They're just very different. I know the one that you shot for me in Loretto, it had the three of us in it, and we kind of came up with a plan, the four of us together, to showcase that there was an apartment in the basement, as if like we were roommates. But what you did with that video, it went viral.
Yeah,
it got
it did,
so
yeah.
many hits, probably still to date the
The
most
most
watched
popular.
video on my Instagram.
Yeah.
And my YouTube is sad, so that's
Yeah.
I don't put
Yeah.
much focus there. but
Figuring
it's
out the
very
YouTube
popular.
algorithm is a whole other kind of
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
But that's a perfect example.
Oh, that's cool. It's about emoting, right? And creating a sense for the viewer of what it's like to experience that place and to have a private moment with it. You know what I mean? Because like,
What
you
it would
imagine
be like to
yourself-
live there?
yeah, like if like when I'm
With
house
us.
hunting, when I've done that in the past, I'm imaginative to a fault, and so like I'll imagine like what would it be like to experience this house during the holidays, like at Christmas time or at Halloween and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And if I can kind of imagine those things in an appealing way, then it's like, yeah, this house is probably going to be a hit. So I want to create those kind of moments in the video content. Of course, we can't mock up Christmas time, but I do want to try to create a sense of what it actually feels like to experience that house from the perspective of somebody who loves it.
Which is so important because that, I know for me personally, when I'm going to do a listing presentation, that's a question I ask of sellers. What is your favorite part of this house? Why have you lived here for X number of years? Like
Right.
what's kept you here?
Yeah.
Because that is the selling feature of the property. That's likely what another buyer is going to see in it. So yeah,
Absolutely.
hitting on that within your photography and videography, again, that's why we've gravitated, I think, yes. Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, go, please.
I was gonna dive in because we've asked, it's a very interesting job, real estate, as is any kind of thing that's involved in real estate. You meet so many different people and you're in their homes, so you get to know them in a very different way. So we wanna
Where are you
know,
going with
what's
this?
your most outrageous story from when you went to a property to do photos?
Give us the juicy
Okay, so I knew this question was coming,
Yeah.
and
I haven't read, so I have no idea what you're gonna say.
yeah, so like in terms of like outrageous stories, I mean like we all had in anybody's industry, there's always like crazy stories where you
Yes.
have like a
Yeah.
crazy customer or something like that.
Yeah.
And in real estate photography, we tend to get annoyed when a house isn't ready. You know what I mean?
We'll talk about that in a minute.
yeah, and that can happen when maybe it's tenanted or there's some resistance or there's a divorce or somebody who's like trying to like you know be aggressive about
They
it.
just
Yeah.
took their time and waited until the last minute to get ready.
Yeah. But I think that in terms of like probably like the most interesting story,
Mhm.
you guys want to hear like kind of a spooky one?
Yes.
So I had an opportunity with the Mississauga team to shoot a house downtown Toronto,
Okay.
and so the house is probably about 200 years old,
Ooh.
and like very old money. Like it actually has like servant stairs that go into the kitchen, and like very cool. Like
Dumbwaiters?
yes,
Yes,
yeah.
Laundry chutes?
Yeah.
And bizarre layouts too, like a bathroom adjoined directly to the kitchen. It kind of like, it was like, well, there it is.
Yeah.
So anyways, I was in this place alone, obviously. It hadn't been furnished. The place had been empty for quite some time. I don't think this is the house that somebody had recently passed in. I think I shot that house earlier in the day, so that might have already kind of like preset my mind. But
Is that where this is going?
Yeah.
so what happened was, it was, I had this feeling that I was kind of being followed around the house. And so you kind of, I had the creeps, you know what I mean? And you know how that
But you
feels.
get that when you walk into some houses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially when it's like all like lots of rooms. Like
Yeah.
there's no open layout about it. You can't really see
Someone
anything.
behind a wall and you have no idea, like they're there.
Yeah.
And it's an old house, so there's sounds. Are those natural? I don't know. Is it me? But what I did is I actually, one of the things that we do at Pumpkin House is we create virtual tours and two-dimensional plan drawings. And that's a whole other step of photographing the house with a completely different system. And I had done that first. And I went around and I used I use iGuide now. And so I photographed the entire place. And then I went around with my camera and started shooting all these rooms a second time for the photography. And I started finding dimes in the middle of the floor.
Oh my god, I just got choked.
Yeah. I get goosebumps. And so like I would walk into a room, large empty room, nothing in it, and there's this coin.
You've been there already before, and the going was.
Okay, but wait,
I
did you go back to the photos?
Yes, I did. So I was like, I dig this stuff. You know
Me
what I mean?
too.
Like,
I
I'm
love
the one
it.
that was
I'm
like
so into
watching
this.
like sightings back in the
Yeah.
90s and all kind of stuff on
Yeah.
Friday nights.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, be an adult. You know what I mean? Is there a ghost?
It's
Probably
fine.
not. You probably just didn't see the dime.
Yeah.
But I had photographed the rooms with the other system.
Yeah.
And when I went back and examined, there were no
Oh
coins
my
in any of those
God.
photographs because I was expecting to have to like shop them out.
So did you ever go back and research the history, like if there was anything there?
I didn't know.
No.
I should.
We
I
should go and do that.
Yeah, we should.
Tell
do
me
that.
that, I'm gonna look.
Well, I would say that it was a happy ghost because just
Leaving
I feel
gifts?
like leaving gifts was like just reminding you that I'm here.
Yeah.
So what I did look up actually is dimes. Is that a thing?
Yes, it is.
And yeah,
It's a
apparently it's
symbol.
a documented like thing.
Yes.
It's the poltergeist. Yeah.
Oh.
Did it say what the,
What the meaning was?
Yeah.
It was like a friendly kind of like just acknowledgement. It says,
Reminder.
"I'm here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
They say feathers, dimes. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I will not
So
be doing
cool.
an open house at that house.
No, I want to. I totally do.
Dimes, no
I'm in.
dimes.
Yeah.
I
Full
remain.
experience.
That is very cool.
Very
I
neat.
was not expecting that.
No.
Dear. Wow.
So aside
Should
from,
have saved it for the Halloween special.
Yeah.
he did say earlier on the form we sent him that he often also gets, we'll say harassed, for lack of a better word, by neighbors when you're doing the drone
Yes.
photography because
Yes.
they think he's spying on everybody.
That's a
Drones
weird,
is
that's a
still a
weird thing
sensitive
about drones.
thing.
I
Yeah,
don't
it
know
is,
what started that, but
Yeah.
I'm not the only one
No.
that's a licensed drone pilot that will be sometimes full out accosted
Yeah.
Yeah.
by people who are concerned that you're there to like peer into their bedroom.
It's funny because
Is
I'm
there
drone and I'm
other
like, oh, a house is
Drone
coming for sale.
pilots that
Yeah.
are creepy and do that on purpose.
They definitely do, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
they're all over YouTube and
Yeah.
YouTube Shorts.
Yeah.
Thanks to my son, I see them.
Oh, okay, well there you go. There you
He
go.
is not
Now I
one.
know.
Making it
Right?
Yeah.
You need like a shirt that says, I'm not spying on you or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I will say for anyone who's watching, if you see somebody operating a remotely piloted aircraft, do not interfere.
Yeah.
You're actually breaking the law.
Wow.
Yes, it's exactly the same as interfering with the flight crew on a commercial flight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Whereas
Well, I guess
if
we
you're-
take your
for
attention
licensed
off, yeah.
pilots, those are registered Canadian aircraft, and if you
You know why he's
interfere with
dropping
that,
this
then
right
you
now?
need-
He's like, the amount of
Crazy
times Sarah
problems.
tries to talk to me when I'm trying to fly my drone. Like the one time I was hiding in the trees videoing him. Yeah.
No. But yeah, no, it's the safety is really, really important when it comes to operating drones, especially around communities where there's parks and schools and that kind of stuff. You have to be cognizant of what you're filming and to what end and everything, and be prepared to have conversations with people that might be curious. But yeah, I think the answer that I gave on that, there's one particular day where I got stopped. I think it was like 3 or 4 times. My neighbors all in one street. They were all concerned that I was.
Neighborhood watch was out.
I mean, maybe they had an incident. Maybe something had happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Prior, but
And I mean, in their defense, it has really shifted because of COVID to use drone photography in real estate as much as we
Well,
have.
yeah, I feel
Right,
like a
like
lot
we
more.
never, it was a luxury add-on before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you couldn't get into homes, people started drone virtual touring them, things like that, so.
I think the technology has advanced so far too, because even
Yes.
like
Yeah.
the home inspectors will use them now to kind of like avoid climbing up on the roof, and you can see so much more of a roof now. So it's a great tool to
So
have.
you get used to them and not going anywhere.
Mhm.
But if they're like floating outside your window, maybe call that in.
Right.
It could be weird.
Yeah, wait for the pilot to land the drone.
Don't throw
Don't
anything.
threaten with violence. Don't threaten the aircraft because that's also illegal. It's like bringing down any airplane
Right.
or helicopter.
And you don't want that bill because they're not cheap.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. But by all means, ask to see the operator's license.
Yeah.
He or she should have their license on them and be prepared to answer whatever questions you have.
Right, cool. So next one, can you give us a tip for sellers? Like, what is the biggest mistake a seller makes when they're getting ready for photo day? What do you want to see when you walk in, and what should you not do?
Yeah. So I get spared what a lot of real estate photographers have to deal with. Because I work with people that are coming to Pumpkin House for a certain type of product, and those people generally are, they're very particular about everything, right?
Yeah.
So I have the benefit of shooting a lot of luxury properties, and most of the properties that I shoot have also been staged by experts like Esther West and Olive Nash that you mentioned at the top of the show.
Yeah.
So I don't really run into the sort of problems that a lot of my colleagues and contemporaries might.
Because like I personally, dirty dishes in the sink,
Oh, yeah.
laundry
Yeah.
out, like, you know,
I
things
think
like
I've
that.
seen that once, like
Really?
dishes and sink, yeah.
Mm.
So it's like the clients that I work with, the people that tend to, like, we find each other,
Yeah.
they're working, just as hard as Pumpkin
They
House
have a
does to make
certain
sure that the
expectation.
presentation's ready to go.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that, like, I know that in a previous show it was mentioned, windows, especially in the springtime.
Yes.
That's actually starting to become a thing now, where
Yeah.
I'm actually having to be very careful about how I'm having light fall on the windows, so that if I can create glare to wash out, don't leave your windows dirty, because you know that you heard me say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, cleaning your windows is a really big deal. And also something that's overlooked, because it's part of the space that you live in all the time, is light bulbs.
Mhm.
Burnt out light bulbs, that's a big thing.
Or being the same color.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being the same color.
That's my
yeah.
pet peeve.
I'd rather it's coming.
I'd rather it be burnt out than you have a warm one and a cool one in the same light fixture.
Yes.
Or two beautiful lamps and one's warm and one's
One's
cool.
cool.
Like,
Well, I think I
Yeah.
also should point out too that Jacob, technically, any photographer cannot alter the image. Like, he can't go in and edit things out of an image, right? Like, you can't add things in technically.
to a degree, the
It
legal,
depends, yeah.
the legal thing for real estate photography is you can't alter the actual space. Like although they do.
Yeah.
Like you've seen images where they use such a wide angle that the fridge is literally bending or the wall is bending.
Right.
That they should not be doing. Another thing that we love about you, you do shoot wide, you have to, but there is a certain extent where it starts to distort things.
Mhm.
So when you
you're
walk in, you're
creating
like,
such
I expected this,
disappointment.
yeah.
I don't understand why people want to put that kind of image out there, because how many times have you shown a house, they're like, it's so small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is not for me, so you just completely wasted your time. The sellers wasted their
You got
time.
yourself cleaned
Clean
up and
the
ready,
house.
yeah.
Yeah, so be
Now,
mindful
in
of
those
that
cases
too.
where you're shooting something like ultra wide, because like there's some people out there and they'll shoot with something like a 14 or 12 millimeter lens, and now you have like that weird kind of like that barrel distortion at the edge of the frame.
You may as well use a fisheye. Let's go for it.
Exactly, it looks silly.
They're getting
Now, but
non-technical here,
but
guys.
in terms of like being like technically sound, nobody's breaking any rules if the photo hasn't been manipulated.
Right.
That is what the room looks like. That's what the camera
Yes.
recorded. Does
Yes,
it
I went off
misrepresent
topic
the
there.
dimensions of the room? Absolutely, it does. So
Yeah.
that's not necessarily going to be the experience that you want to have on the back end
Yeah.
when somebody goes to the house and they're like, oh, I
But
didn't
you can't like
realize.
put in a window or like there's a
No.
massive crack in
Exactly,
the wall, you
unless
can't take
it's
that out.
disclosed. So things that I'll do for homeowners is like say they didn't get around to cleaning a stain off the wall because the couch used to be there and the stages were rearranged furniture, and now you can see evidence that there used to be a sofa and maybe
But
it
it's not
didn't
a
get a fresh coat of
Defect
paint.
in a house. It's
Right,
just-
and these are things that like you can fix with a cloth
Yes.
or with just a few
Quick
strokes of
coat
a
of paint.
paintbrush,
Yeah.
things like that. Or if I know in advance, and again, I work with people that I trust and they trust me. So if somebody tells me there's an object that needs to be removed or repaired, we've got a contractor coming out tomorrow to do it. Is there anything you can do about removing that from the shot?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or just
But
shoot
just as
around.
long as we're not
Yeah.
misrepresenting the product.
Right.
Right.
Perfect.
If
Good
there's no
explanation,
fireplace,
thank
you
you.
can't put a fireplace in, or like Sarah said, if there's no window, you can't, or if it's a broken window, you can't fix the window.
But like if you see the staging, why can't I think of the name of it? But they have to write on there that this is being artificially staged.
Virtual
Yes,
staged.
thank you.
Yes.
Not
Virtual
artificial,
staging,
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to full circle back to the light bulb, so again, for Jacob to just, it's better to not have a light bulb than to have two different colored light bulbs.
That
Because
is
then you
true.
can just like,
Yeah.
put it back in. and
So
it
my
looks like
solution to
it's
that when
on.
I'm on set is just turn the light off.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
But then you don't get that warm, fuzzy, luxurious.
So I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Lights on or lights off in your photography?
Depends on, okay, you
I
guys.
don't know, that's your, I leave that to you, Jake. I'm like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
I'm
lights
always
on.
of the belief, yeah, like windows, like curtains open,
Yeah.
all the lights on.
But I think that's what like
Have you
in
ever
our
thought about
training
why?
kind of-
Why lights on? Curtains open is obvious, but why lights on?
I don't know. I just
So
thought it was
that's
adding to the
dimension.
light
So
of the room.
it's a thing that it seems to be a real estate photography thing. Oh, go ahead. What are you going?
No, you go, you go.
So with the lights on, it's almost like having a catch light in somebody's eyes. Like the way that this room is lit right now, there's actually catch lights in all of our eyes. So it adds a little bit of
Away from the lights.
yeah. But
Is it
the
the shiny bits in there?
Yes.
but it adds a little
Looks
bit of
like a
warmth. It
sparkle.
adds some personality,
The
and it makes the room
sparkle.
feel more alive.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
it's in use. Whereas if the lights are off, then it can be a little bit more clinical looking. But if you take a look at magazines like Architectural Digest, very seldom are the lights on. And if they are, they've actually been turned on using special post-processing techniques so that you're not casting all kinds of color on the walls.
Okay.
So
Shadows and stuff.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so one of the things that I would say one
So
it's probably
true,
my
yeah.
principal pursuit is to bridge the gap between architectural photography and interior design photography and real estate photography because they're different worlds.
Mhm.
And
Real estate, you want the mood, so that was my
right,
answer.
real estate you want quick.
Yeah.
You want something that can be that's going to present the place adequately,
Mhm.
and then move on to shoot the next house. Whereas with interior design photography, it might be 30 minutes, it might be 2.5 hours for one composition. And of course, we don't have time for that in real estate, right? We have to move on, we have to sell the house.
I mean, we could spend that much time together.
We could.
We do.
Yeah. So like
Each
one
one's
thing
gonna
a
be
year.
My timeline.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know, I think, I like the look of lights off, but I shoot with lights on and everything because I know that that's what the industry asks for.
So
I
this
feel
is
like we
very,
should test this out. We should,
Yeah,
like,
because now
try
that
it.
you're saying that, I feel like that actually would be a good measure of how much natural light is coming into a room.
Well, he's still
Right,
gonna
which is a
brighten it
selling
though.
feature.
Like, you're still
Yeah, if you're
adjusting
shooting
it.
lights off, you're also usually.
Well, he
adding-
goes more
Right,
moody,
right,
it's more
okay,
darker.
no, Jake has a good spectrum is
The
the
word.
Or you guys would know it as contrast. So he
Yes.
shoots with a full range of your pure whites to your pure blacks and everywhere in between to give it, they're more realistic. You get
Yeah.
a sense like you're actually standing in there,
Yeah,
almost HDR, sorry, high def, but
Mhm.
not because you're just using a tripod and
yeah, so
posing
there's
it
a
properly
trick.
versus just washing it all out.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Exactly. So there's lots of ways of doing it. HDR is one. HDR stands for high dynamic range, which usually involves taking multiple photographs at different exposure values and then layering them, and then extracting the highlights from the darkest one and the shadows from the lightest one. And when you blend it all together, if it's done poorly, it actually starts looking cartoonish and it looks like it was all drawn with pencil crayons, which is awful.
Yeah.
So what I use is, and then there's flash ambient blending, there's ambient shooting, there's flash only. So there's all these different ways of putting it all together. And it's pretty obvious what they are. Yeah, no, there's a lot. It's technical, but that's part of why I love it. So the way I shoot is, and I'm going to be showing some of my cards or something.
Photography, turn it off.
It's
You
kind of
could, you could give someone the exact settings that you use and you'll end up with a very different
That's true.
end result. So
Yeah.
I think you're safe.
So I shoot ambient, expanded dynamic range. That's how I kind of frame what I do. So I shoot the way that an HDR photographer would shoot. So I shoot 3, sometimes 5 brackets, depending on how much contrast I have from the prevailing light. And then those will be stacked in post-processing. But what I'll do is I will just kind of like tease the shadows up where I need them, and I'll tease the highlights down where I need them. But I'm looking for contrast so that I can create depth.
So
Right.
similar to if you know your Instagram filters and your Instagram editing buttons, you've got the contrast, but then you also have shadows and highlights. Same idea, just to a whole nother level.
Yeah. And with those tools on your phone, you're using universal modifications.
Yeah.
So if you were to pull the shadows out, you're pulling all the shadows out.
Right,
Whereas-
like you're only using one image, whereas you're saying you're.
Your
Well,
layout.
I'll
Yes.
manipulate, I'll make universal adjustments to my photographs, but then I'll also go back in and I'll make very specific adjustments as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm masking out certain areas and everything, and that's why post takes so long.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So when you're going and you're paying all this money for photography and professional photos, like there's a reason they're putting a lot of work into the editing side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
right, yeah.
case in point, a fireplace, you posted a picture the other day of you shooting a fireplace, you had your tripod out, I saw that.
Yeah.
And again, you can't just shoot fire.
Yeah.
You either, everything else is black, and you get the flame, or everything's washed out and you don't see the fire.
Right.
That's
So
really
there's-
annoying when I try to do that. Or stars.
Yeah.
Yeah, taking a picture of the
Stars,
moon.
Yeah, I was trying to do it last night. I was like, oh, it's so pretty. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Literally
Oh.
like this.
There's a lot more.
Layer. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you have a beautiful fireplace, that's something that as a seller you want to showcase to the world. So kind of helpful if there's a fire in it. Because one of the biggest questions is, does the fireplace work?
Yeah,
Every time.
every time.
No,
So
really?
that's-
That's a thing people ask?
Yeah, all
It should
the
be,
time.
it should be something that.
I mean, yes.
Fair enough.
It should be.
Yeah.
Is it what certified? Yeah, I'm gonna get it.
Real quick, and then we'll move on, because, see, I told you we'd get chat.
So- I
know,
Just do it.
I know.
It's cool. Big one, and this is a big Amazon thing right now. Instagram, there's like Amazon hacks or little tidbits. Cool or warm? Light bulbs, as we full circle back to that.
Oh.
You're light bulbs,
What is
man.
better?
Okay,
I
so
was like,
ideally,
Me too, but Nick
if
is
I'm lighting it with my own lights, I want it dialed into 5500 Kelvin.
Oh, what is 55
55
Kelvin?
So that's
wattage, isn't it?
no.
Oh.
That's the color temperature.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's something that's going to resemble natural sunlight as closely as possible. However, when you fill your house with bulbs that have that color temperature, it looks cold.
Yes.
It doesn't look right. So like
So
I would
more
say,
the LED kind of like white light.
well, that's the type of light source that it is doesn't necessarily dictate the color temperature anymore. That used to be true.
This is so complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And light bulb.
Like tungsten lights will generally give you a warmer tone, sort of
Okay.
like the lamps that are behind you right now. They're
Okay.
casting a warmer light.
Yep.
The problem for me, and in the way that I shoot, is the orange/yellow kind of cast that it's throwing on the wall behind it. So I'll work hard to make sure that those color casts are removed or at least minimized, so that we're not completely corrupting what the actual color of the space is. Especially if we've gone through the trouble of staging it and presenting it well with a company like Olive and Ash or something like that. A lot of thought went into the interior design, right? The colors and all that kind of stuff. So for me to be completely reckless with how it's all presented would be
Very
Yeah.
good.
So
And
generally,
that's
as
what
long
she's doing.
as, like, your overhead lighting should all be one, and your accent lighting should all be one.
And
If they're the
different.
same, it is what it is.
Okay.
I think it's a design thing that you would have the accent lighting in a warm tone, because again, that,
Well, she always has the warmth. That makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, and it just gives that kind of like cozy
Vibe.
vibe.
And-
But I often see you shoot with the overhead off,
Mhm.
and then we'll just turn on the accent lighting, because
'Cause
then
it
you are
reflects.
just working with
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you might have a really cold light above you.
And again, natural light is key, so open your curtains, people.
Yes.
We're opening them anyway, so
Yes,
open them.
But
and see
sellers, at the end of the day, this is very complicated. Just do you. Just do you. Just leave your house and we'll help you figure out the light bulb.
Exactly.
Right, right,
Yes.
what's- Just make sure
And
there
actually
are
some-
light bulbs.
Yeah,
Make sure
and when it
that
comes to
that's it.
curtains, that's something that your photographer should be helping you with as well.
Yes.
Is so
That's a
like
whole nother.
yeah, when we're
source.
shooting interiors, flagging windows is something that is actually part of the job, and I don't think a lot of photographers do it because it takes time.
Mhm.
So if I'm, for instance, yesterday I shot a couple of luxury properties, and one of them, with the time of day that it was, with being wintertime, we have a lot of blue cast coming in through the windows with it being reflected off the snow. So I'm shooting a bathroom that has this beautiful deep green color to it, but it's all being ruined by the blue light that's coming in through the doorway.
Mhm.
I can't close the bathroom door because it's a powder room, so I can't be in there with the camera and have the door closed.
Right.
So what I had to do is go into adjacent rooms and start closing all of the curtains and closing doors to flag all that light so that it doesn't corrupt the picture of the powder room that I'm making.
Right.
Then I have to go back around and undo all of that stuff so I can shoot those rooms with all of the available light.
Their
that I
best
need
light.
to.
So
So
now
this is
that you're
literally
all
next level.
cross-eyed and confused, you can see why we like Jake and why we bring in the professionals and don't just use your iPhone. There's so much more to it to attract people into your home.
And I feel too, like in my experience, it's as a realtor, you're nervous too when it comes to shooting day, because there's pressure on you to present it in the most natural light too, or its best light.
Yeah.
And I've always often, like the minute you arrive, tell me what I need to do to help you. What do I need to do to make this look the best for your job?
Yeah.
There's a lot, in my experience, there's been a lot of photographers that they're very quiet. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna come in and do, there's no feedback.
Right.
There's no suggestions made, where you're very vocal and like, this is what we need to do, but then you get the job done and then it turns out great.
Well, and again, I
Yeah.
get it, you're not a cleaner,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
you're not there to.
Thank you for
people's-
saying that.
Yes.
You're not there to deal with people's dirty dishes.
No.
Again, those are pain points personally.
Yeah.
But I know every shoot that we've done together, we're there early.
Yeah.
Or at the same time.
Yeah.
And we run through the house while Jake's doing, the drone
Outdoor
footage and
shots.
whatever,
Planning
the amount of
shots.
dishes that I have had to put away or stuff in someone's oven or dishwasher.
Here's one for you. Towels, hand towels.
Okay.
Take 'em
Do you
out.
like them draped nicely over the vanity or draped over the front of the stove?
Oh, I see.
Or no tea towels?
Yeah, so-
Esther
Hand
says
towels.
get rid of them. Esther said get rid of
Yes.
the towel, because I remember I
Because
shot
people
one.
don't fold them or they're like dirty.
No, she
Yeah.
said just don't, because it takes away from the stove.
Yes.
Yeah.
Precisely.
I got in
Yes.
trouble for that, because I
Yeah,
lost
so
a towel at one time.
Hand towels
Sorry.
and dish towels, if there's a place to hang them,
Right.
we don't want to have empty hooks
Right.
or like towel hangers and that sort of stuff
Yeah.
in
Yes.
bathrooms. You want to fill those so that they have a little bit of purpose. And also what they can do is they'll actually soften the space and add a little bit of texture that if it looks soft and comfortable, then the photograph will feel that way a little bit too.
Right.
But having them draped over things where maybe you have like a marble counter and now there's a towel,
Yeah.
I will clandestinely move them.
Yes.
Mhm.
I'll
Yeah.
shoot the room and then I'll put it back where I found it because I'm not an interior designer also. You know
Right,
what I mean? And I don't want to interfere with what somebody else has done.
He just
Um,
doesn't want it in his shot.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I'll do my job, they've done theirs and keep them separate.
Perfect.
Very good.
I'm gonna be a bit of a party pooper and just let us know that we have about a 20-minute mark to be able to get market stats in, so we should probably, if we're gonna hit market stats.
I do
we'll
want to
just
ask
that.
him this one last question that you had though.
Yeah, so we wanted to, obviously, we've kind of circled on around this subject a little bit here, especially Jacqueline at the beginning, but generally, who pays you for this service? So if you're getting photography done in a house and we're listing, is the client paying you? Is it the agent? Like, what is your general?
Yeah, so being a business person, I know that the money always comes from one place. So at the end of the day, the client is paying for everything. Which I think is also why it's so important that it's done well, because that person is entrusting somebody else with the decision. But the more direct answer is I get paid by the agent.
Right.
So if your agent is hiring a photographer that's charging a little bit more because they're doing a little bit more, that's not something that the seller should sweat,
Mhm.
because that's all part of what that particular realtor is bringing to the party. And I would also add to that, like if you're shopping around for a real estate agent, take a look at what they've done. Take a look at what they've published in the past, because that's going to give you a pretty good clue of how you can expect your property to be presented.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, I'm going to date this guy and I'll change him. Don't worry. You're not. He is who he is.
Yeah.
So like if you're looking at content that's been published by that real estate agent with examples of previous listings, and the photography looks like something that your kids could have done with their iPads, then that's how
What's
your
my
business is
money
going to
going
be presented.
towards?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Whereas if you see photography that looks like it belongs on the cover of Home and Garden magazine, or if, like you said, like your video content that you're watching gives you goosebumps and makes you feel a little bit nostalgic, then that's what you should expect for yours. I think. So
Yeah.
that's kind of ties back into the importance of selecting your realtor carefully.
Right.
I agree with that.
And I would say a good example of reflection of your work would be checking into your YouTube. That's like all of your properties usually go up there, right? Like all
Yeah.
of your shoots. Yeah. So pumpkin.
And you get to know
photography on
Jacob's
YouTube.
work. Like, how many times have I messaged him? The one time I was looking at it, I was like, oh my God, somebody stole Jacob's style.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, it is Jacob. Okay.
He did
You
do
have a very like,
Yeah,
you can tell your work. You can tell that you put the time and the energy into it. So
That's very good.
beautiful to
Thank
see
you.
that.
Now, if you do fall in love with his stuff, because you're gonna go after this, you're gonna jump onto his YouTube and check him out at Pumpkin House Photography.
Yep.
But you can also request from your agent to work with Jake, so.
Or just call us and we'll just use Jake.
I mean, definitely.
Not stealing
that's
clients,
it,
not stealing
definitely
clients.
that's it. Awesome, so did you wanna hang around and chat market stats, or do you have to?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'd love to hear you chime in, because you obviously see things a bit ahead.
Yes, yeah. So you're like Esther. We're always like,
Different
what do you
answer.
got coming here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Picking up again. So I guess we'll start off with Dufferin County. Obviously, we kind of said in our last show that we were starting to feel a bit of a pickup. We thought spring market was coming.
Yeah.
We did definitely see a few more houses selling in February, with 57 in Dufferin County versus the 32 that we saw in January. Listed sale price is still staying pretty close to that 97% there. So that's when you're listing your house at this amount and the house is actually selling for 97% of that sale price, which is great to see. That means we're listing at the right price and people aren't trying to come in and get crazy deals or going crazy over list price. although we are starting to see multiples, some bidding wars in certain areas. Certain houses, very specific, make sure your realtor is very on top of things and knows where these areas are starting to see that. But active listings in Dufferin County is still sitting around that 196 mark, which is very similar to what we were last month. Average days on market has improved a little bit, about 34%. Now I'm hearing a lot of people say that the country homes, the rural homes are still sitting a little bit longer than the in-town, which is pretty common in the winter. If you're going to be selling a rural property, make sure you're marketing it properly, make sure that it's the right time, and pros and cons to listing in each market. So just understanding what that means for you. But average sale price in Dufferin County right now is $968,304, with your detached being over $1 million still, so it's $1,088,000. We've had a lot of townhouses and semis go for sale, which kind of brought down the average, just because before it was a lot of the detached. And really just seeing, most of them are starting to see a little bit of an uptick from what we did back in December, January, which is very common. Overall, though, it seems pretty good. We have 3.43 months of inventory right now, so
Still not enough.
still not enough. We're still low in inventory.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my buyers are feeling that kind of like, you know what, there's nothing to go out and buy right now. I think that's might be why we're seeing the multiple offers.
Is the one-offs that do pop up, and it seems to be the ones that are like turnkey.
Yes.
Very nicely
ready.
presented.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
They're going
also,
very quickly.
we were looking at the numbers in the one that you had the other day. It was very much like a very hot market, and that was under the 800, around the 700 mark. A lot of first-time buyers, a lot of fixer-uppers, investors. That market is still very strong right now.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it's. I think that's a heavy point there, and then also anything above that million in town seems to be moving fairly quick as well.
Too. Yeah. I was just gonna say same thing as that was Orangeville we were looking at.
Yeah.
There was 26 sales in Orangeville last month, but 12 of those were under $800,000.
Yes.
So that kind of reflects that affordability.
And that's definitely affected the days on market too.
Yeah, days on market's down 20 to 23 days. Our detached saw the biggest increase in price though. We're up 13% month over month, which kind of surprised me. Keeping above that $1 million mark. So I think semis and towns have seen the biggest correction in price happen.
Yeah.
But sorry to interrupt, but based on, the percentage of the list price to what it actually sells for, we're seeing it's been the last 3 months that it's pretty consistently like 97 to 98%.
Yeah.
Which really tells us that we're on the right track and things are starting to balance out. We're starting to get a better feel.
So like
of what
mom and
people are
dad were
doing.
not crashing to 1986. Like we're
Yeah.
not going to see
No,
those
prices
prices.
happening.
I actually think with them holding interest rates, we're gonna see a flood of people going to get their pre-approval, especially with all these random multiple offers that are happening.
Well, I think what's happened is all of that stagnant inventory has now been gone. And now we're back, like we're less than 2 months of inventory again, which that supply and demand factor is basic, right?
It's a perfect storm.
Yeah.
Like, are you sort of seeing a lot of inventory coming up?
What I'm seeing is we're busier now this year than we were last year at this
Oh,
time. Yeah.
interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily indicate what's happening in the real estate market at
Oh,
large.
But you also went full
Because-
time too.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
business has changed and more people know about Pumpkin House now and that sort of thing. So
Right.
those are factors also.
But great for you.
Yeah, but I think this is great news. I think that it's, to me, what I'm hearing, just as a layperson, because I'm not a real estate agent, it sounds like maybe there's opportunities for younger people with first-time home buyers to maybe get into the market now if they can withstand, maybe the short-term, potentially long-term turmoil of having to deal with higher interest rates.
Yeah,
But also it could be that more investors are trying to buy low.
yes.
That's what's
It's
happening, which is
very
gonna
tough
start pushing things back up.
For investors right now. It's very tough for them. So I think that's why we're seeing so many first-time buyers coming out, is this business income tax implementation has really kind of hindered a lot of flippers and investors buying new builds and so on, because they're losing their shirts on taxes.
Yeah.
But I personally see this being the perfect storm. You've got the spring market, which is naturally the busiest. You've got all of a sudden, for the first time in over 6 months, we are holding interest rates and there's still not a lot of inventory. So I was a seller, I'd be getting on market because at least you're up.
Yeah.
Right?
And there's hungry buyers out there.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
buyers, they're just waiting for the inventory. It's
Waiting
not,
for
There's buyers that
It
are
is,
bored. They're
100%,
bored of looking
yeah.
at the same few houses that have been listed for a while and they're not moving. They're not moving for a reason. A lot of them are still priced redonkulously.
Yeah.
There's
you know
a
what
few-
also, I've seen a lot of, not a lot, but I have seen a few recently where the listing agent is listing way under value and hoping for that like 150 over. I've seen other agents reporting the same thing. Is this coming back? Like, is this now the
They're
world we're gonna be
forcing
going
it
back?
but
They are. There are agents that are pushing that sort of mindset. I spoke to one the other day that was 150 under what his clients wanted. I was like, why are you doing this? Just list it. But he wants to be seen over the other people. So I get it. I get why he's
The
doing
marketing
this.
tactic
But
behind it. Yeah.
it's annoying.
It is.
Buyers don't want to see that again. But
yeah, as a seller, just make sure you're discussing the pros and cons to that. It really just depends on your situation.
Yeah.
It can have a really great effect and a quick sale, but it can also be a huge pain in the butt if your goal is to get the right money.
and nobody comes in and offers it.
You're putting yourself out of your house for a ridiculous amount of showings for people that have no intention on, like, they don't want to pay that price. They're there
Well, you
because
think
it's
too,
$150,000 less.
When we're in the COVID market, we were telling people, okay, if your max budget is 900, look at house it at 800. Right now, we're not advising our clients to do that. So you really have to also know the area as the agent and know if they're undervalued or not. Right?
And that originally started happening, that strategy in COVID, because pricing was raising so quickly. So it's not that agents necessarily in the beginning
Intentional.
intended
Yes.
to price low, they were pricing at market value.
And then things
Just
just
everybody
shot
was
up.
paying more, so then it was, like, right now, we're doing the backwards chase of that and keep lowering to find where buyers wanna be, but it was the opposite. So just chat with your realtor about pros and cons of going that route.
Yep.
Um,
At the end of the day, it's your choice.
Yeah.
yeah, that's my 2 cents. Sorry, did you have anything else about Orangeville?
Nothing, no, that's it in a nutshell.
Still a little slow.
Yeah, like, I mean, overall, yeah, I mean, we're down in terms of the number of transactions compared to, well, I hate comparing to last year, because last year is the
Right.
extreme, right? So we have to kind of put
The
that
sky
in
is falling.
perspective too.
Yeah.
Yeah, then, I mean, that's what the headlines are doing. I'm just getting so sick of it.
The sad part is I don't know about you guys, but every person I speak to that's like on the fence and they want to list or they want to buy, they're, oh, well, why aren't you? The news.
Yes.
The news.
Yes.
The news is so depressing. The
Yes.
news's
Stop
job is
watching
to be depressing.
They
That's
need
like
to make
they
money,
are
yeah.
there to generate clickbait and, all of this chatter. It's not necessarily, they don't know.
No.
They're just guessing.
No.
Like how
They probably
many,
know less than us since we live and breathe it every single day.
how many things did we hear people's opinions? We were asking over the last few days, okay, the interest rate is being announced today, as Sarah mentioned at the beginning of the show. What's your prediction? They were all over the map.
Yeah.
And these are like
Educated, yeah.
active, educated mortgage
Well, I was
brokers.
just gonna say, we're guilty of it within even our own industry, even our own real estate board. I'm gonna shout out, like, it's clickbait still. It's
Yeah.
getting the attention of realtors to click on the news article and read it, but it's not framing it in the correct light. Like, it's,
No.
yeah, anyway.
It is very, very micro market right now. I mean, it has been for a long time, but we're right back in that because Barrie is seeing multiple offers.
Yeah.
We're seeing a very quiet market.
Yeah.
You go down to Brampton, Mississauga, they're seeing multiples. It really, you just have to be flexible and understand that you're working with your agent and you probably will need to pivot and readjust multiple times.
Yes,
That's just the way that it is.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why we work with a professional, because a professional lives and breathes it and they know how to navigate. So
yeah,
trust in your realtor.
yeah.
Trust in your realtor and trust that if they come to you and say, okay, we might need to do a price adjustment, that's not just because they priced your house wrong.
No.
In this market, it's because the buyers are just telling us something different.
It's
Yeah.
changing.
I know, I have no idea what my house is worth today.
I can tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure, I know you're good, but like, I think that with a lot of sellers, the instinct is to compare against last year's. You were saying, you know what I mean? And it's
Yes.
impossible to make a business case when you're comparing against outliers.
Right.
Which is what everybody's doing,
Right.
including, what we're hearing in the media, because it is sensational and it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And you click through, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
It's also that, like I've said it before, and I don't need to use a negative context of saying that we're greedy, but when you maybe heard that last year your house was worth 1.2 and it's now come down to 1.1. Oh my gosh, I lost $100,000. Oh,
But you didn't lose it
But you
because
saved
it was
like
never actually there.
250 on the other end, right?
but go back 2 years, you're up quite a bit compared to that. So
Yes.
we, again, putting things into perspective for sellers. And I think that's what it's taken a really long time for sellers to digest that, and some are still having a hard time doing it. Anyway, to come to the realization that it really isn't so bad.
For example, I have a client right now in Orangeville that is looking to go to market. But every time I speak with them and we come up with a game plan, a strategy on pricing, a couple will sell or a couple of new ones will pop up that just completely contradicts our pricing strategy.
Right.
Either they're coming up way higher or they're coming way lower.
Right.
It's very all over the map. Now, once you actually get into the houses and you scrutinize them, you can see why. But on a Realtor.ca perspective, you're looking at, four bedroom houses that all
Why is
appear
this
to
listed
be
here, but you're saying I'm here?
right.
Yeah.
So it's a very kind of day by day strategy at the moment.
Yes.
So Shelburne, honestly, not anything very exciting happening in Shelburne right now. It's still very slow, but we did see a big increase in sales compared to February. So
Yeah,
we're back
you
up
did.
to 11.
Double.
11 sales in the town in February, but better than 5.
Yes.
We still have a shortage of inventory, although it again appears that we have 4 months of inventory, but 3/4 of that are assignment sales in the new subdivision.
Yeah.
And I spoke a little, very briefly, I touched on the buying and the business income tax. That's why they're not moving, and that's why they're all still listed so high. These guys are going to lose their shirt if they don't get that money, but
Yeah.
it's definitely affecting.
I've also
The rest
heard
of the
last
sales.
night that the actual projection date for when those are ready are quite far away. Like one of my clients, their relative has a house in there and the dates keep getting pushed and
Keeps
pushed.
getting
So they end up
pushed.
having to buy something else in order to have somewhere to live and then wait for this house to eventually be ready.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was like, well, where was
I
I?
feel
Why
like
didn't you call
they
me?
just started, like I was up there the other day and like a couple are occupied now.
Yeah,
But
Yep.
not a whole lot.
not a ton.
Yeah.
Hard to say why. 39 days on market is the average in Shelburne right now. We have 51 active, and like I said, 51 sounds like a lot, but 3/4 of that is assignment. And I'll just remind
Can't
you that
actually
you
live
can't
in it.
actually go see assignment sales and you can't live in them just quite yet.
Yeah.
So it's hard for buyers to want to buy them.
But there's great houses for sale in Shelburne right now. That's why I'm not really sure why
But
people
those-
are kind of jumping on them.
Those are the ones that are moving. It's that new inventory
Yeah.
that hasn't been up for 4 months. That's moving relatively quickly, which is why we're only at 39 days on market.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if it wasn't for those few sporadic new ones,
Right.
we'd be pretty stale.
What's the average for like one of those assignment properties? Good years?
Well, so they're big homes. They range from a
Like 4 or
townhome
5.
up to like 5 bedrooms, and the average of them are 4 to 5 bedrooms. But again, you want to talk about a range, they're anywhere from $999, or there's townhouses in that complex listed for $999, or they're listed at 1.7.
Yeah.
And they tend to stay listed much longer, which influences that number.
You're right.
Yes,
Yes.
now, I mean, if you go back to the history, some of them have been smart and said, well, I may as well get something instead of nothing. So they have lowered them, but a lot of them have just had to relist and relist and relist and relist, and they're not. Because it's not worth 1.7 in Shelburne anymore, but that's what they paid.
Yeah, unfortunately, that whole subdivision has been so exposed to the volatility of the market that it
Yeah.
has been all over the map. So people
Yeah.
getting in at all those different times.
And if they paid 1.7, we've all heard of capital gains, this new tax is saying that if you purchase a property and sell in a year or less, you're paying business income, so you're paying 100% tax on your profit,
Yeah,
like instead of 50% of capital gains.
right.
So their expenses, their taxes on this are massive, and so they need to sell for what they bought for or a little more.
Or to try to recoup what they can in case it does go down further.
Right, so
Yeah.
we're starting to see a bunch of them turn over into rentals, because at least if you rent them out for a year, you're capital gains,
Yeah,
because you provided income or housing.
right.
Got it.
Okay.
Anywho, Caledon is a slightly better story than Shelburne. Caledon seems to be picking up the pace. 95 sales about 31 days on market. But detached saw a big decrease, unfortunately. We saw a 25% drop on detached in Caledon. So they were
That's
1.7 and they jumped down to 1.3.
Again, because we have to do some digging.
You have to dig
on
in and see what actually
was-
sold,
what
yeah.
sold.
And Caledon's funny too, because it goes from like the north end of Brampton, and then there's nothing, and then you're basically in Orangeville.
Right.
So
And it's in Bolton too, like it's a
Yep.
huge space.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of rural in there that would be included.
but
We've
still
got 2
1.3
minutes.
is not too
There's a pretty
bad.
broad spectrum in terms of like value of properties as well.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
Because
Yes.
there's mansions. in
Yes.
Caledon.
Huge horse farms.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Semis did go up. They're at about 1,037,000, and towns also went up at 904 on average. So Caledon's
Seems
looking
about right.
pretty good. But yeah, if you're a seller in Caledon, you might just want to see what is happening. Get your agent to do a little more digging
Digging.
first, but great time to buy a detached in Caledon.
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's all I have. You guys have anything else?
Yeah, we just gotta wrap her up for the day.
All right. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. I found it very interesting. I like the topic.
She likes schooling us.
Yeah,
Photography nerd, that's
Right.
Right? You know how it is, right? You
Yeah.
start talking f-stops and ISOs and people are like, what? What did you shoot?
Maybe one thing to send us out, are you seeing anything big trending right now in terms of style of whether it's like reels that are getting put out, or
Yeah.
we talked about the moving fast through the house and touching things, or anything you can say about
Yeah, well, reels are being used more effectively now, and so like a lot more of us are offering that as a service. We do as well, and I have a lot of fun doing that.
Right.
In fact, I've even for this year we changed our prices so that we can encourage more people to use those reels more often.
Right.
So that's something that's definitely trending. But in terms of the actual videos themselves, like people that are taking my approach to this particular problem set, we're finding that like the interest in like those really quick speed ramps and everything is actually starting to
Drop
diminish a
off.
little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was like super hot like 2 years ago when everyone wanted to like quickly speed ramp through the whole place and accelerate from one room to the next.
Yeah.
But if you take a look at where some of the best videography in the world for this industry is coming, it's usually New Zealand and Australia.
Oh,
That's where I look for inspiration.
Okay.
And
They're ahead of the curve.
yeah, absolutely brilliant cinematographers. But they'll also spend 2 or 3 days shooting the place to create the content that they do. So it's a little bit different attitude. But the camera movement tends to be slower.
Okay.
The camera doesn't transit the same distance that say one of mine would
Okay.
right now. And I'm actually like starting to experiment with that a little bit. Having the camera completely locked off, which means that there's no movement on any of the 3 axes, just having a static shot and then finding motion to fill the frame from some
Oh,
element of
so
the environment, so
like
it looks a
the
little
running
more
water.
cinematic.
Okay.
Yeah, or like blowing leaves, or a realtor like moving through, or an actor moving through a scene,
Okay.
all that kind of stuff. So it's actually looking a lot more like a movie,
Mhm.
and a little bit less like something made for TikTok.
Right.
And when we were talking about what's happening in the hierarchy.
I really like the
Okay.
2 to 3 days though. I think we should spend 2 to 3 days.
Yeah, we should do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, let's talk
It's like, oh my god.
Let's talk budget. Anything's possible at 50 grand.
Oh, thank you so
I'm
much
sure
for
that's
joining
not
us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Talk about
That's
that
awesome.
So again, Pumpkin House Photography, find Jacob online. Definitely go
follow.
check him out. Check
Yeah.
out his YouTube channel. There's some awesome stuff. You'll cry, you'll laugh, it'll be great. You can follow us on YouTube or Instagram at Behind the Sign Canada. If you have any questions for us for our next episode, anything that you want us to, topics, special guest recommendations, questions about the market, please shoot us an email. We would love to chat with you, of course, a DM as well. And that's all we have for today. So until next time, thanks again for watching.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Bye for now.
Take care.